Welcome back to JForrest English. I'm Jennifer, and today we're going to read a news article together, an advanced news article, so you can improve your fluency and sound like a native English speaker. Let's get started.
Let me read the headline. Canada-US sign deal to better coordinate fight against wildfires. Wildfires. Let's take a look here at this preposition, against. Just take note that you fight against something. In this case, wildfires is a noun. You can also have a verb after against. And because against is a preposition, that verb would be in the gerund form, the ing form. For example, fight against paying taxes. Let's say you want to fight against paying taxes, not against paying taxes. So here you have the ing, the gerund verb. Let's continue. Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and David Cohen, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, signed a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding. As you can see, this is a very long word. We often use an acronym, MOU, an MOU. So you'll see this a lot in news articles, but especially in business-related news, even on a website. An MOU. We have an MOU. A memorandum of understanding, an MOU, is simply an arrangement or a deal between two parties to do something specific. Signed a memorandum of understanding, so they agreed to the terms of this arrangement Thursday, and this is the terms of the arrangement: to improve cross-border cooperation on wildfires. The cross-border represents that Canada and the US are divided by a border. So the cross-border is offering support. So Canada will offer support to the US and the US will offer support to Canada. That's the cross-border. So let me write that for you. Cross-border. This represents the fact that Canada and the US share a border. Cooperation on wildfires. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades. First of all, you should always be looking at your time references in a sentence to understand what verb tense you need. So here we have 4 decades. What verb tense is needed? This should be easy because the verb tense is right there. The present perfect. The present perfect because Canada and the US started working together in the past and they still work together now. So the present perfect for an action that started in the past and continues until now. Present perfect. And we know that we need the present perfect because of our keyword for decades. So this is our keyword for the present perfect. Keyword. So we can say time reference. Now, if this were something different, such as last year, what would my verb tense be? Last year is a completed past action, so I would change this to the past simple. For example, the two countries worked together last year. Or if my keyword was next year, what would you say now? The two countries will work together next year. So always look at your time reference to determine your verb tense and ask yourself if you have the correct verb tense. Let's continue. First, before we continue, let's take a look at ad hoc basis. What does ad hoc basis mean? First of all, the expression is all of this, on an ad hoc basis. This means as it happens, So there is no agreement previously determined. They decide how to work together as it happens. I'll give you an example. Let me just write this: as it happens. For example, you could say, I decide where to travel to on an ad hoc basis. Remember, on an ad hoc basis, all of that together. I decide where to travel to on an ad hoc basis, which means when I need to travel, let's say once every 3 months, I just decide at that moment as it happens. I don't decide in advance. Or you could say, we solve problems on an ad hoc basis, which means as the problem happens, you decide how you're going to solve it. You don't necessarily have a process that you decided on in advance to solve that problem. So that is how the two countries worked in the past and continue to work now because of our present perfect. But it sounds like this memorandum of understanding will specify how the countries will work together, which means they will no longer be working on an ad hoc basis because the memorandum of understanding will tell them how they will work together. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades, the New Deal, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, let me write that, the MOU, formalizes that cooperation and makes it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in when Canada needs them to quell a fire. To quell a fire simply means to stop a fire as is happening. So right now they're trying to quell the fire. It's a very specific term. You won't need that in your everyday speech, but based on the context, it should be obvious because what do you do with a fire? You stop it. Let's take a look at pitch in. U.S. firefighters to pitch in. When you pitch in, it means you contribute. You can contribute your time, your resources. You could also contribute your money. For example, everyone pitched in and bought Fred a present for his retirement. So this suggests that everyone on the team gave money, maybe $5, $10, $20, and then all that money went towards one present. So that is financially. You can also pitch in terms of your time. Everyone pitched in and let me write a new example here. Everyone pitched in and cleaned the apartment. So here, it's not necessarily that people gave money, but they gave their time, they gave their effort, they gave their hard work. Everyone pitched in and cleaned the apartment. So everyone contributed towards a specific objective. So in this case, the specific objective is clean the apartment. In this case, it's to buy a present. So pitch in is to contribute to something specific, and it can be money, it can be time, it can be other resources as well. So in this case, it will make it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in. So maybe they will give money, but most likely they'll give their skills. They'll give themselves to help stop the fires. And vice versa. Vice versa is when you want to say the opposite is true. So U.S. firefighters pitch in when Canada needs them, but also Canada pitches in when the U.S. needs support. So vice versa. I'll help you and you'll help me. Vice versa. So here, the opposite is also true. Vice versa. Now, I summarize all of these notes in a free lesson PDF, so you can look in the description to download the free PDF. Let's continue. As part of the deal, the MOU, there's now a new framework that stipulates how firefighting resources will be exchanged between the two countries. Stipulates, this is another word for outline or determine. So the framework determines how the resources will be exchanged. It outlines, it stipulates. Basically, it says, outlines, determines how the resources will be exchanged. So how Canada will pitch in when the US needs support and vice versa. All right, let's continue. The deal is designed to cut through the red tape. Oh, what is red tape? You are very familiar with red tape. Red tape represents official rules or processes, but that seem unnecessary. So when you have to do something simple like change your address and you have to fill out 7 different forms and mail them to 7 different people, doesn't that seem a little unnecessary? So you can say, oh, there's so much red tape. We usually use this when dealing with the government, but you can also use this for a large organization or any organization, but generally large organizations like Google, IBM, they will have a lot of red tape as well because they are so large. They have so many different processes that you need to follow, but many of them might seem unnecessary. So let me write that for you. And to cut through the red tape means to try to reduce it. So this deal is to try to make these processes work better, more efficient, more effective, and bring together the agencies on both sides of the border. Remember that other expression was cross-border. So you could use that as an adjective and say, and bring together the cross-border agencies. The cross-border agencies. Now, of course, in Canada's case, it's Canada and the US. But US also shares a border with Mexico. So it could be the US and Mexico, could be cross-border. So whatever country that you border with would be the cross-border agency or country that have had a hand in fighting these destructive fires. To have a hand in something or doing something is an idiom, and it means simply to be involved with something or have influence on something. And notice, in is a preposition, so the verb will be a gerund verb, ing. But you can also use a noun. So you might say, who had a hand in the party? In Fred's retirement party. Remember Fred? We all pitched in to buy him a present. Who had a hand in the party? Who had? Because remember, to have, our verb is have. So this is have in the past simple. Who had a hand in the party, in Fred's party? And then I could say, oh, I had a hand in planning Fred's party. So this simply means you're involved in it or you influence it in some way. So maybe you were responsible for deciding what present to buy Fred. So you had a hand in the party. Let's continue. The deal also calls for better information sharing so that both countries can stop a fire, quell a fire, before it spirals out of control. When something spirals out of control, it simply loses control quickly. And it implies that it's difficult to bring it back under control. So to lose control quickly. lose control quickly. You can use this in workplace situations because let's say you're having a meeting and you're negotiating something during this meeting. You could say our negotiations spiraled out of control, which means you lost control of the negotiations. So maybe you wanted to offer a certain amount and then now everyone is talking about an amount that is a lot higher than you wanted to offer. So your control over that negotiation, over the amount that you wanted to pay, you lost control over that and you lost control quickly. So it spiraled out of control. For example, our negotiations spiraled out of control. Are you enjoying this lesson? If so, I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers on TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, add all these natural and advanced expressions to your speech, and learn how to communicate your ideas fluently and naturally. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for a link on how to join. Now let's continue with our lesson. For example, Canada will now have easy access to sophisticated US satellite data that can identify fires. The deal comes as Canada grapples with a record-breaking wildfire season. To grapple with is another way of saying to deal with, And we use this with something negative. You grapple with a problem, an issue to grapple with. So you might say, we're grappling with the negotiations. We're dealing with the negotiations. And because I already explained that the negotiations have spiraled out of control, you know that there's something negative there. We're grappling with the negotiations. The US has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters. Deploy is a verb to mean when you move either people or resources from one location to another in order to support that other location. So here you can deploy the firefighters because they're people. You can also deploy resources, deploy support, deploy food, deploy aid. So to deploy, you move from one place to another. It can be within a country as well. So Texas deployed resources to California, for example, but we commonly see this when one country deploys it to another. The US has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters to Canada to help local authorities. Canada has received support from other countries like Australia, Chile, and South Africa. Thank you to those countries. We appreciate the support. Here, Canada's receiving the support, but you could say Australia deployed support to Canada. Chile deployed support to Canada. Just like here, the US deployed these resources, the firefighters, to Canada. Canadian firefighters have helped out the neighbors in years past. The neighbors being the US. They're our neighbors to the south and we're their neighbors to the north. Here, help out. This is an optional phrasal verb. Notice here it's a phrasal verb because you have the verb help and you have the preposition out. You don't need out. It's optional. You can simply say Canadian firefighters have helped the neighbors in years past. Have helped. It's simply optional. Can you help me out? Can you help me? There's no difference there. Can you help me out? Can you help me? But if you do use the phrasal verb, make sure you know the correct placement because you can't say, can you help out me? Can you help out me? That's incorrect because the pronoun needs to come between help and out. Can you help me out? Can you help me? So if you're not too sure about sentence structure, just use the verb form so you don't make any grammatical mistakes. In 2020, for example, Canadian firefighters were deployed to the northwestern US. So remember, Canada sends the firefighters and the US receives the firefighters because we use the verb deploy. Deploy. During a particularly ugly wildfire season. This is the kind of thing that Canada and the US can do together. We will always have your back, Cohen said. And remember, Cohen is the ambassador to Canada. So he is an American and the US ambassador to Canada. So Cohen is saying we, the United States, will always have your Canada's back. So let me write that because I want to explain this expression to have one's back. So the US will always have Canada's back. So the expression is to have one's back. And that's why I changed it to the US and Canada because I wanted you to see this possessive. To have one's back. It's possessive. This is the expression to have one's back. And this simply is used to say to support. So if I say, I have your back, I have your back, I'm saying I am there to support you in whatever way you need that support. Don't worry, I have your back. I have your back. So that's a very nice thing for the US to say. We will always, I like this, always have your back. So thank you to the US for having our back. So you could say that. Thank you for, so let's say someone says, don't worry, I have your back. You can say, thank you for having my back. Or in this case, because it was we and your, I could say, thank you for having our back. And our representing all of Canada. So our, my, back. Thank you for is a gerund expression because for is a preposition. So you need the ing. Thank you for having my back. Don't worry, I always have your back when it comes to improving your English. So you can say, thank you, Jennifer, for having my back, my back. And then you could say, thank you for having my back when it comes to teaching me English. Because remember, it's support, but you can offer it for something specific. When it comes to teaching me English. So you can put that in the comments if you want to thank me for always having your back. And that is the end of our article. So what I'll do now is I will read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. So I'll do that now. Canada, US sign deal to better coordinate fight against wildfires. Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson and David Cohen, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, signed a memorandum of understanding Thursday to improve cross-border cooperation on wildfires. While the two countries have worked together on an ad hoc basis for decades, the new deal formalizes that cooperation and makes it easier for U.S. firefighters to pitch in when Canada needs them to quell a fire, and vice versa. As part of the deal, there's now a new framework that stipulates how firefighting resources will be exchanged between the two countries. The deal is designed to cut through red tape and bring together the agencies on both sides of the border that have a hand in fighting these destructive fires. The deal also calls for better information sharing so that both countries can stop a fire before it spirals out of control. For example, Canada will now have easy access to sophisticated U.S. satellite data that can identify fires. The deal comes as Canada grapples with a record-breaking wildfire season. The US has already deployed more than 1,500 firefighters to Canada to help local authorities. Canada has received support from other countries like Australia, Chile, and South Africa. Canadian firefighters have helped out the neighbors in past years. In 2020, for example, Canadian firefighters were deployed to the northwestern US during a particularly ugly wildfire season. This is the kind of thing that Canada and the US can do together. We will always have your back, Cohen said.
Now, I also want to say thank you for always having my back by liking this video, commenting on this video, and sharing it with your friends. So make sure you do those 3 things. It would really show me that you have my back. And another way I have your back is with this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can download it from my website right here. And why don't you get started with your next lesson right now?